So I like to start out not by introducing myself, and there's a reason why. So first thing I want to ask you guys a few questions, and I don't want you to answer yet. I just want you to make a mental note of the questions that I ask you, and keep the answer in your mind. And then when I'm done, I'll ask you to present the answers. All right? So first thing I want to ask you, if you can tell me just by looking at me, if you could identify what ethnicity you think that I am, what origin my family, my ancestors are from. So you just categorize that in your head and just leave that answer somewhere. I appreciate it. All right? So if you could think about where my ancestry is from. All right. Second question, if you could tell me just by looking at me, where do you think I grew up? Okay? And the next question I want to ask you is, if you could guess what type of level of education I have. Okay? And then I want to ask you if you could guess if I served in the military or not, and if you think I did, what branch of service. Okay? So, these are just some simple questions. Also, if you could tell me if you think I'm married, and if you think I have any kids, all right? So, these are simple questions. So let me ask you, let me stand actually. So, first question, okay? So, can anyone, just by looking at me, can you tell me where do you think my ancestors are from? Ireland. Okay.
Norwegian.
What? Norwegian. Excellent.
Northern Greece.
Northern Greece. Irish. How about you, sir?
Poland.
What's that? Poland. Scotland.
New York.
What's that?
New York.
Well, that's true too.
I'd probably get Northern European.
Northern European. Okay. All right. Actually, most of my ancestors are from Israel and Russia. All right. So we're getting there.
Part of the tribe.
Okay. Where do you think that I grew up?
Queens.
Queens. Who else?
New York City.
What?
New York City.
Okay. Queens. Roughly. Okay. All right. Now, does anybody guess if I'm married, if I have kids?
We all wear a ring.
Okay. Excellent.
Married,
Do I have kids?
Fire.
Anybody guess if I have kids or not?
Yes.
Okay. What other questions did I ask you?
Military.
That's right. Yeah, supposed to be there.
U.S.
Thank you.
Marines.
That's right. Anybody else? Obviously, you should give it to me. All right. Anyway, actually, my name is Eric Dim. Okay, I'm a lieutenant in New York City Police Department. I've been serving the police department for approximately 17 and a half years. I run a special operations unit in South Bronx in the housing developments. So the reason why that I ask you these questions, so I just want to touch on, first of all, I want to thank you guys for all being here. It just shows that you have an open mind and that you're willing to listen. Whatever your views are, what your thoughts are, it's important that we have open minds, right? So the reason why I ask you this is so that what I want to show you is that we all do this thing which is called having a natural bias. Whether you're a police officer or not, we all have a natural bias. We compartmentalize people, we categorize people seconds within meeting them. You may not even realize that you do this, but you do this all day. Just when you're walking down the street and you're crossing the street and cars are coming, when you see people, you may not realize it, but subconsciously, compartmentalize people and you categorize them in what you believe that they are just by what you see on the surface, just by the appearance, right? So the reason why I want to tell you this, so has anyone ever heard of the Susan Boyle effect? No? You have?
She's the singer on like Youth Town.
I was saying. You heard, right,
She
okay.
came out and everybody thought she was terrible.
Right, exactly. So the Susan Boyle effect, exactly, that's great. So Susan Boyle, kind of frumpy looking, she's overweight. She doesn't have the appearance that she would be someone to knock your socks off. Exactly that. She went on American Idol, and she presented, and she blew everybody away with her voice. Her voice did not match the appearance that everyone perceived she would have, just by looking on the surface. Why? It's a natural bias that we all have. And we do that as a safety mechanism, and we do that, it's just the unconscious confidence of how we categorize people until we get to know them. And the reason why I want to touch on this point, okay, is that's what goes on with policing. It's just people every day. And right now, what's going on with the media, politicians, just maybe yourselves, maybe your family, friends, propaganda, anti-police rhetoric. A lot of times you'll hear that police are racist. And what I want to tell you is that's not necessarily the case. Are there racist police? Absolutely. And you're going to find in any profession, you're going to find, and that's why we have evaluations. You're going to find, you know, mediocre, outstanding, just okay. It's a profession like anything else. But I will tell you as a whole, and especially myself and the units I run probably one of the most diverse units in the police force. And just working amongst the NYPD, we are amongst the most diverse police department you're going to see in the country. The NYPD is actually the 9th largest army in the entire world, if you compare it to the army. So we have about 35,000 police officers currently serving right now, amongst 5 different boroughs. So that's my point, okay? So when you're policing, you have to, in seconds, sometimes make an assumption, okay, within an eighth of a second on what you believe someone would fall into or what category they are and how you compartmentalize them just in seconds of what you see. So can anybody tell me what a thug looks like? What do you think a thug looks like?
They're different looking thugs. You're going to see different ones in Brighton Beach than you will in, like, Jackson Heights.
That's a good answer. It's a fantastic answer. And the reason why I ask that, it's great. Because a lot of times you'll see, all right, the issue that we're having right now, young black males wearing hoodies, okay, the hoodies are closed up, and you'll see police encounters, all right, with people dressed like that, and the assumption is that the police are just stopping them because they're black. And that is not necessarily the case, all right? I myself, I work in the Bronx. The Bronx as a whole, less than 10% of the entire Bronx is Caucasian, all right? So the demographics that I'm dealing with, specifically in the South Bronx, there's less than 2% of Caucasian residents in the South Bronx, all right? So on a daily basis, 98% of my demographics are of minority. So when we're investigating, like I said, I run a special operations unit. And what we're doing, we're looking for people with illegal firearms. We investigate robberies, shootings on a daily basis. So 98% of the people that I will encounter are African American, Black from the Caribbean, Hispanic. So when you see, a lot of times you'll see statistical reports put out of how many minorities we encountered for the year. And, you know, the scales are going to tip. You're going to see that it's unfortunate, but the appearance of it is that we're only encountering and stopping young minorities. But unfortunately, like I myself, I work in a high crime area, and there's a propensity for violence there. And we do our best, like I said, my unit in proactive police work, to mitigate the high violence of crime that we have. And so, for instance, if I go out today with my teams, and I'm going to go to work after this, first thing I do when we get to work is we investigate all the crimes that happened within the previous 24 hours. And so I myself and my teams, we're going to strategically post ourselves in spots where there were a rash of shootings, robberies, whichever we're investigating for that day, and potential descriptions that we have. And I will tell you, so where I'm working, 98% of the time, the description is going to be male black, approximately 15 to 21 years old, or potentially male Hispanic. Okay, and we may have limited information, and based on just those small factors, we have to go out there and hit with boots on the ground and try to find these perpetrators that are creating havoc for the rest of the residents. And I will tell you, most of the people in high crime areas, low crime areas, most of the people are good. They're good people. You know, they want to have a good quality of life just like everybody else. But that 10% creates, it's an anomaly. Let me tell you, it creates real havoc for these people. That small percentage. And unfortunately, in my line of work, I don't get to deal with that 90% of nice people. I deal with that 10%. The 90% of good people are out, they're going to work, they're taking care of their families. The 10% that causes the propensity for violence are the 10% that I encounter on a daily basis. Those are the people that we encounter. So unfortunately, with all this anti-police rhetoric, everyone has their own opinions. So what I like to say about policing is I like to refer to the, has anybody ever heard of the Dunning and Kruger effect? Yes, you have.
Yes.
Explain what the Dunning and Kruger effect is.
So people who tend to be like very low at an ability or skill are much more likely to overrate their ability than people who are better.
Outstanding. Right. So Dunning and Kruger was a study that was done in, I think it was 1998. And the study was done at a university, and Dunning and Kruger were two different professors. Their studies, the outcome of their studies is that the less you know of a subject, the more that you think you can do that. And the example that I give you, for instance, is the heavyset guy that's sitting on the couch that hasn't got up the entire year, who's watching Eli Manning throw a pass, and he's saying, damn, why did he do this? Why did he do that? You know, he thinks he can do it better. It's easy when you're watching on the couch. You know, when you're watching the game than when you're not in the game. And the same thing goes for policing. So, and I give you this example too. Has anybody ever sparred here? I would assume most of you spar, right? Okay. How do you feel when you spar? You ever feel excitement, nervous, frustrated, right? Your breathing is heavy. You ever feel like when someone hits you, it's a pounding, right? Have you ever watched on video? You have. Have you ever watched that video, sat and watched it and said, that doesn't look anything like I felt when it was happening. It looks like patty cake. I will tell you myself, I competed in boxing a lot. And sometimes in the ring, I would feel overwhelmed and, oh man, I'm getting the shit knocked out of me. And then I would watch the tape and I said, man, it was like patty cake. It was like nothing happened, right? So you have to understand that sometimes that's what's going on with the police also. So sometimes the police are put in positions to make arrests or just have encounters with people in the street where it's a high intensity. At that moment, while it's happening, the police are feeling a high intensity. There's maybe knowledge of this person they're dealing with who has a propensity for violence. Maybe this person has assaulted police in the past. While that's happening, people are throwing stuff out the windows. Old grannies hanging out. There's phones in your face. There's cars going by. There's traffic. There's all these contributing factors that make it a chaotic scene, right? But now, and then let's say we make an arrest and force has to be used. And unfortunately, it doesn't look pretty. It looks ugly. So now when we sit back, days later or weeks later, we watch this video, and the video only gives you just a segment of it. And you're watching it, not in a chaotic environment, in a controlled environment, and you look at it, and some of you might say, it doesn't look that bad. Why did the police respond in this way? Right? Why do they apply so much force? It doesn't look as aggressive as what the cop felt. And I correlate that to your sparring. When you're sparring, that may be the same thing. That nervous energy you feel like you're getting pounded, and then you watch it on tape, and it's not nearly as indicative of what you were feeling at the time. So that's a lot that goes on with police work. No one, listen, the bottom line, I'll tell you this. Policing is always an evolving mechanism, right? And policing evolves with the times. If we go back to, let's say, 1950, right? And we would look at Officer, and I'm just going to give you a rhetorical statement here. Maybe Officer John Smith, who's walking the beat in 1950, right? He may have a gun, right? Maybe handcuffs. He won't even have a radio, not even a vest. He's going to have limited tools, right, to do his job. And if we move forward to 1960, that same John Smith is going to have a radio. right? He's going to have handcuffs, and maybe now they're going to add a pepper spray. And then we move on to 1970, and John Smith is going to have all that stuff, and now they're going to give him a vest. And we move to 1980, he's going to have all that stuff, and now they're going to add a radio. So moving forward into the technological area that we're in now, John Smith, who's the police, has all that stuff, plus a tablet in his hand, right? All this technology at his disposal because that police had to evolve with the times. And now, here we are, the body-worn cameras, right? And this is what I think is the real game changer, okay? What happens is, when we're wearing these body cameras, now everyone gets to see what we see. And the reality is, people don't want to see it, right? We all know what goes on, we're all adults here, we all know what goes on in everybody's bedroom. But if you had a camera in everybody's bedroom, you wouldn't want to see it, right? And it's the same thing. Doing police work, we have an idea of what goes on. But now that we see it, most people don't really want to see it. It's like, oh my God, this is what goes on. This is how things are handled. It's the nature of the beast. So I will tell you this, in our training, we apply what is considered the minimum amount of force necessary. So that's always subject to interpretation. You know, and I will tell you, and I'm going to show you at the end of this, who here thinks it's absolutely ridiculous when you see 8 to 10 cops trying to handcuff one person? Anybody here? You probably do. That's more. How many people do you think it should take to handcuff one person?
It depends. Do they have a weapon? Do they have a what
Let's say they don't have a weapon. Let's say they're completely unarmed.
What drugs are they on? Yeah, they're on bath salts.
Well, I actually got a positive crowd here. That's great. But so how many would you say someone who's by themselves, not on drugs, right, to get this person in handcuffs without punching them, without kicking them, just trying to pull their hands behind their back? How many people do you think it would take? Three? Four? Okay, everybody? Three? Okay. Good. We're going to test that theory later. Okay. I really appreciate that. So what I also want to talk about, okay, so everyone here is living in New York City. I assume that you guys have, if you're not from New York City, you spent a predominantly good amount of time in New York City. And a lot of times what you've heard was the appeal and repeal of what they refer to as stop and frisk. Anybody knows what that is? Okay. So most people believe that Ray Kelly invented this. Does anybody believe that? Does anybody know what it is?
Yeah.
You do? What is it?
So, that people look suspicious about submitting.
Okay, great. I like that. Looks suspicious. That's outstanding. Anybody else?
It's just a random check with security. This is supposed to be based on profile.
Not random, but that's good. It is. It's definitely not random.
You're checking for weapons.
Sometimes. Okay. Sometimes. So hold that thought. Now, as a special operations lieutenant, and I run proactive police work, our job is to go out there and try to stop something before it happens. Okay. And this is by garnering observational skills, right? And when I tell you that, there are observational skills. These are skills you learn over time. Things you see that you probably don't even realize. Has anybody ever read the book Blink? You did? That's a great book, right? Well, in the book Blink, right, is they're paying people crazy amount of money to try to identify if some Picasso is real or fake, right? Spending hours on this thing. And here comes a guy who looks at it for 2 seconds and goes, that's fake. And they all say, well, how do you know that, right? Well, it's the same thing in policing. I've been doing policing so long that what you may think is a unnecessary stop, I saw 1,000 things in an eighth of a second that led me to believe someone has a firearm. So, and I'll give you a case in point. Has anybody driven down the street and you see someone running at full speed? You might say, what happened? I've been doing this so long that if I see someone running down the street at full speed, I say, that guy's running for the bus. Or that guy just got into a fight with his wife. That guy just robbed somebody. That guy just stole a car. And how do I know that? And if anybody ever has an opportunity to read that book, Blink, it's the unconscious competence, all right? What's going on in your brain that you don't even know that you have the knowledge of because you see it so many times. Like, for instance, Razier is an instructor, right? He sees so many different students that he probably knows the move you're going to make before you even do it, just by maybe the shrug of a shoulder. You know what's coming because you've seen it so many times. Am I right? Yeah. So let's go back to stop and frisk with this, okay? So that's something that is high profile amongst New York City, right? What that is, okay, that was a court case in 1968. It was a court case called Terry versus Ohio, okay? And what this was a police officer had an encounter with a person they suspected of burglary. Late at night, he was in a dark parking lot. But because of his observational skills, and he's dealt with people so many times that have carried weapons, he could see the outline and the butt of a weapon in his waistband. And so prior to this case that was established, he grabs that firearm, retrieves the firearm, and placed him under arrest. And initially they suppressed the case, but then the judge overturned it because the judge said that a police officer has the right to be intrusive to keep himself safe. All right? So what that means is he didn't have enough to make the arrest at this time, but based on his encounter, he had enough to check him, stop him, detain him, and check for that potential firearm. All right? So now, there's also another case that correlates with this. In 1976, there was a case called People versus DeBoer. And what that gave the police 4 levels of intrusion. It gave the police, okay, the right to be basically nosy, right? So so the difference between police and security guards, right, is that badge. That badge gives police the right to be intrusive. Stop people asking, hey, how you doing? You know, can I speak to you? Or where you coming from, right? Has that ever happened to anybody? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe some of you know. Where you headed to? Now, these are just questions at different levels that the police have. But when we get to the level of stop and frisk, that means that you're going to detain someone, okay, against their will, whether they agree or not. It could be verbally, it could be physically by force, and that's because you reasonably suspect someone committed a crime. So what does that mean? Reasonable. Okay? So you said something suspicious. Okay? So what you may think is suspicious may not be suspicious to someone else. It may be suspicious to me. You may agree. There may be behavioral indicators that you observe that you thought, this guy, you know what, this guy's case is cards. Let me stop and detain him and investigate it, right? So that's what stop, and we call it stop, question, frisk. You don't frisk everyone. Stop them, detain them, talk to them. You may frisk if you have indicators that there's a weapon there. And the level after that, obviously, is just making an arrest. Probable cause. And this is where we get into the resisting arrest, and this is where we get into the problems, okay? That's why I'm a firm believer that they should teach in all high schools, there should be a criminal justice course. Because I think people have a misunderstanding what the difference is between getting arrested and convicted. Does anybody know the difference? Does anybody understand the difference between being arrested and convicted? Yeah. What's the difference?
You can be arrested and not even charged. It really is about even charging you.
That's correct. Yeah. So what is an arrest?
When you were put in custody, and I mean, when you were detained in police custody and you were unable to leave, you've been arrested. It's a custodial arrest, but yeah, I would argue that I've been arrested. I mean, at that point, I'm entitled to.
What's the grounds that I need to arrest someone?
Probable cause.
Probable cause. What is probable cause? Everybody knows probable cause. What is it?
Reasonable belief.
Excellent.
It's a reasonable belief for you.
Reasonable cause to believe that a crime was committed. That's why police officers go through an extensive psych course and a psych interview, because you have to be a reasonable person, right? If you think pigs fly, that's probably not somebody you want to hire, right? But you want a reasonable person, right, that believes the crime was committed. So let's say I walked in this room today, right? I walked in here, and there was a loaded gun sitting next to you, right? So would I have reason to make that arrest? There's a gun sitting right next to her. Would I have reason to make that arrest? Right? A reasonable person would believe that it's sitting right next to you, right? That you're carrying that illegal firearm, right? But, so now we go to court. And we watch video and we see that there was a gun here, but she just sat next to it, and it wasn't hers. So that's why, you know, people get upset. You know, the police make arrests. This is just on what they believe at that moment. That's what the court is for. The court is to mitigate these factors, to investigate it, and determine who actually committed this crime now. That's why you're innocent until proven guilty. But people get upset when they encounter with the police, and we have people resisting. More now than ever. And that's where things get real murky. And unfortunately, you know, here we are in a controlled environment, and everybody's training, and you're not trying to hurt each other. But out in the street, okay, there is no timeout. There is no do-over. You know, we got to get this person in handcuffs and bring him to court. That's basically what we almost are like the messenger. This person needs to go to court to determine if they did commit this crime or not. So that's why resisting arrest is a crime in itself, because you're obstructing the process from happening. You know, and that's why I'm a firm believer that there should be a criminal justice course in all high schools, so that people have the understanding that, hey, if I ever have an encounter with the police, right, and I've been identified as a potential perpetrator, but God, I know that I'm innocent, right? Not to resist and to let the process play itself out. That's why we have this court process that we have. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But it's by far, in my opinion, the best thing to see in the entire world, right? Because you are innocent till proven guilty. So, unfortunately, here we are in a time where there's a lot of anti-police rhetoric. I will tell you this, in 17 and a half years on the job, I have never worked with someone that said, hey, let's go out and get this guy today because he's black. Let's go get this guy or girl because he's Spanish. It hasn't happened, and I don't think it's going to happen. So a lot of this propaganda about racist police is exactly that, in my opinion. It's rhetoric. It's sexy. The media sells this stuff. It's sexy. Are there bad police? Absolutely. There's bad in every profession. But for the most part, I think the police do a good job. It's a tough job. We have to go completely on observational skills. I teach my people, okay, when you go out on the street and we're looking for potential perpetrators and we're trying to stop crimes before they happen, we go out and we form a baseline. What that means is, so if, let's say for instance today, let's say we're assigned to do security at the Yankee Stadium today, right? Let's say we're going to Yankee Stadium, it's 90 degrees, Yankees are playing Red Sox, right? It's June 25th. So as a police officer, I'm going to get assigned to post that. So I'm going to form a baseline in my head of what I should see. So if I'm going to Yankee Stadium, it's 95 degrees, it's June 25th. What should I see? What should be the baseline that I think is normal?
Drunk people in shorts.
Drunk people in shorts, right? Excellent. What else would I see? What would they be wearing? Jerseys. Okay. How about facial expressions?
Obviously.
Smiling, right? Joking with each other, right? So like I said, here's my post, right? Let's say this is my post. All right, we got 8-2, whatever it is. You're watching so many seats, right? Your post is from there to there. So I have to form a baseline in my head of what I should see. What would be normal, right? So like I said, you're going to see people with T-shirts, see people with Yankee shirts, right? See people facing the game, see people drinking beers, people in crowds joking with each other, right? 95 degrees. Now, here's where the Terry stop and the people versus the board case come in. So now, here I am on my post. Now, out of clear blue, I see 3 guys walking together with hoodies on, okay? 3 guys walking together with hoodies. They're all wearing jeans, okay? All 3 of them have gloves on, okay? Does that fit the baseline?
No.
Doesn't fit the baseline, right? That doesn't appear to be normal. So immediately, it's suspicious in itself. So just on this factor, am I going to stop this person and detain him?
You might stop and ask the question.
Right. Right. So I may engage him in conversation, or maybe, right, I might engage him in conversation to see what they're doing, right? See if there's any other mitigating factors, any contributing factors that bring me to a level of suspicion that I want to detain him. Because it could very well be, could be 3 people from Alaska, right? Right? And it just so, right? Or it could be 3 people that just got out of a mental hospital, right? Or 3 people who are anemic. Could it be? Absolutely. Could it be 3 people that decided they want to rob somebody today? Yes. So these are the things I have to look for. Observational skills. You even do it in Krav Maga, right? When you're, they teach you in the training here, if you see triangles, right? What does that tell you? Someone's reaching for something, right? Someone may be reaching for a knife. Someone reaching for a gun. So you're looking for behavioral indicators when you're riding the subway, right? Right? Someone reaching towards their pants. Maybe they grab a knife. Maybe it's someone who's, unfortunately, they have only strap hangings on the train, right? Who want to expose themselves. So you do it yourself. You form baselines when you ride home on the subway, when you take the bus, when you drive, when you're walking. You form a baseline of what appears to be normal for you to keep yourself safe, right? You're walking down the street, you see people smiling, it's a hot day, they're all wearing t-shirts, and you see someone wearing a big bubble jacket, right? You may walk a different way for that person. You're saying to yourself, this person may be mentally ill, right? Or maybe this person is trying to conceal weapons, and you don't want to be the next victim. So this is what goes on for policing all day, all the time. And unfortunately, for me, working in the South Bronx, the demographics of where I am, 98% of my encounters are going to be minorities, right? It's not because they're black. It's not because they're Hispanic. It's because of where I'm employed, right? There's crime everywhere, right? There's different types of crime. And like you said, I asked you what a thug looks like, right? We don't know. You know, I've encountered young men with hoodies, big bubble jackets, and some of the nicest kids who go to universities. What they choose to wear is their own expression. However, am I going to be devil's fool and not watch them? Absolutely. You know, if it doesn't form the baseline for whichever post or whatever assignment, whatever mission I have for that day or that week, that is going to be something I watch and pay attention to and use my observation skills. Because I watch people, that's what police do. That's what cops do. We're people watchers. We watch people all day. And we make, with an eighth of a second, a determination if this could be a potential perpetrator or not. We constantly scan all day. So, with that, anybody has any questions about policing?
So, in regards to self-defense, I had an incident a long time ago. A female roommate assaulted me when she was drunk, and I called the police, and they said because there were no marks, they couldn't take her away. That being said, there was an incident recently where a mob of people attacked 2 Israelis in New York, and the Israelis fought back. They were taken to prison. Do you know why that happened? And what constitutes self-defense, really? And what are you okay to do?
It's a great question. So let's start with the 2 Israelis that were arrested. In a situation like that, that's why it's important that we talk about the dichotomy between being arrested and being convicted. So in a case like that, there may be limited information for the police to make a determination at that time. So the best option at that point is to place them on arrest, right? At that point, it is reason to believe they committed crime. We don't know if they were the aggressors or not. At that point, we may not have time to observe video. We may not have enough witnesses, which is why we want to mitigate that in court, where we have time in a controlled environment to start working on getting video that will support that those 2 Israelis actually were in defense of themselves. That's why, in a case like that, their defense would be self-defense. Because when you go to court, there's different types of defenses to explain, right, what you did. Like, for instance, as a police officer, if I'm in a situation, and God forbid that day comes, and hopefully it doesn't, I had to shoot someone, and unfortunately, they fall to their demise, right? Is that homicide? Yes. When you kill another, it's always homicide. But there is unjustifiable homicide and justifiable homicide. So the justifiable homicide may be, maybe he's trying to grab my weapon, maybe he or she pulled a weapon on me, right? And in self-defense, I had to use that. So it's justifiable homicide. So in a case like that, it would be justified for self-defense. And there's different types of defenses that are used in court to explain why you did what you did. So in a case like that, sometimes you have to make the arrest. We might have enough information to determine who's the primary aggressor at that point in time. But if it's a chaotic scene, it sounds like it was a chaotic scene after watching some of these videos, the police may not have enough resources or available information at that moment to make a clear and concise determination. So you make the arrest, they're innocent until proven guilty, and then it can be mitigated.
A good prosecutor won't even like get that far. A good prosecutor will watch the footage and see what happened and know across the case.
Right,
Yeah, they were released that day.
well, there you go, case in point. So,
Thank you for this presentation. A question about kind of the last thing you were talking about. So if a police officer killed someone in self-defense, I think one of the things people have been talking a lot about is that some police officers or some members of the public are worried that police officers are hiding behind certain rules like qualified immunity to get away with something that we wouldn't get away with. So for example, if someone mugged me on the street or started to attack me and I killed them, I actually might get in a lot of trouble, right? I might go to jail for second-degree murder, manslaughter, or something. But police officers have an extra level of protection, and that's, I think, been a lot of the highly publicized media cases where maybe there is body cam footage. They're like, this police officer killed that person, just shot them. They only had a knife and were 20 feet away. They didn't get in trouble for that, and I think
you have a fake knife?
No.
I'm
just wondering. I'm not saying. I'm just wondering about the rules. Why are the rules different for police officers?
You have a fake gun? Okay, outstanding. So we teach in the police department that you should be a minimum of 21 feet. So let's get 21 feet. Okay. Say about. Okay. So I don't have a belt or a holster. Can you put it in the pocket?
Yeah.
All right. So now, I know everybody likes the. I don't want to slip and fall here. I know everybody likes the magic tool, taser, right? What do you guys think about the taser? Okay, well, I know there are.
It's a non-lethal.
It's a non-lethal tool, right?
But to deal with non-lethal situations. If you have a knife,
Well, I'll tell you this.
I'm not pulling my taser, I'm pulling my gun.
Some tools are referred to as non-lethal, but any tool that is non-lethal can be lethal. All right, so. Now, I wish I had a gun belt. So, just to show you. So this is might be a little bit more than 20 feet. Okay. So now, are you confident that you can get to that gun before I stab you?
No. I mean, probably, but I'm not an expert at firearms.
What if you throw it?
What's that? No problem. But this is the point of this, okay? So there are a lot of critics who say, why did the police shoot this person? Like I said, because they're nice, they have 21 feet. Here we are in a situation where a controlled environment, we're in a rubber room with mats, right? What if you're in a situation where you're in a hole? I work in a house building. The hallway may be, not enough for a person to lay down sideways, hard line, right? And behind, or maybe you're in an apartment. Behind you is a dresser with nowhere to go, right? So, all right, let's try this, right? So, what I want you to do, okay, on the count of 3, I'm gonna go, okay? And you gotta pull that firearm, okay? And you can make a decision, all right? Either fire the shot, or get out of the way, all right? So, you guys ready? I'm not really gonna say anything. On the count of 3, ready?
1, 2, 3. Whoa, you got the
ask you this, like, it's more the cases where like the guy on video was running away and the cop shot him in the back and was not prosecuted because of qualified immunity. So what happens?
Is that the
there?
one where the guy was shooting over the shoulder?
No, this was the
We're
case.
talking about the one in South Carolina?
I think
That guy
so.
went to jail for 17 years.
All right.
So, but that was the Scott case. My point is, okay, did you feel comfortable enough if you had to? Your back was against
No,
the
it's
wall.
totally scary. I'm not arguing. I don't think that
You see
was one of the
how quick
cases.
I got there with a knife?
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable to get that gun out, your back's against the wall, you need, I'm going to tell you, and as a knife expert, I'm sure you can agree. 21 feet, somebody's really good with a knife, they got some speed on it.
I needed to be super prepared. for
Yeah, and, I mean, this is in your pocket. You got to get this out of your holster and prepare it. And, I mean, by the studies are showing you need a minimum of 21 feet. So within that 21 feet range, we've had videos, we've had numerous cases where the police officers have gotten there.
I guess maybe I'll use a different case. Like
No, but it's I think it's
so
always a window we don't think about, right?
What if it's a non-violent crime? And I don't want to like hog this, but I'm very curious about this. I appreciate this.
Okay, no, this is great.
So like Eric Garner, like selling loose cigarettes. Like, first of all, should that even be a crime? I don't know, but it is. You know, choking him to death, and then not getting put in prison for choking him to death seems like strange, right? If I choked someone to death for selling cigarettes, I go to jail. So I think people, what they're upset with is like, I mean, that's not a case you'd be working on. You're doing these special ops, doing like violent crimes.
I'm glad you bring that up. So,
but like that case really bothered people, including me.
I know it did. And there's different ways to look at it. It's an unfortunate case. It really is. Tragic. No one wants to see that happen, including the police officer that took him down himself. I'm confident, okay? There's no police officer that I have ever worked with. At 99%, I will tell you, confidently saying that without even knowing. 99% don't get out of bed and say, hey, I'm going to kill someone today. 99% want to go to work just like you do their job with as much comfort and ease as possible to go home. Right? And I can tell you, there's so much, it's so heavily weighted for police. There's so much oversight, right? There's civilian oversight, there's internal affairs, there's all this oversight for police that most police don't want to get involved in something that is prolific because it's bearing on not just you, your family. You know, you're getting to a situation that is prolific, especially the nature of things. Everything is captured on a cell phone video, and if it's not on a cell phone video, there are cameras everywhere. We have cameras in Times Square. I can see inside one's pocket, right? What I can tell you with that is, no one wants to be a part of it because not just you get the bear, it's on your family. You know, I myself, I'm on numerous BLM websites where I'm getting death threats for doing my job, and then they've even put information that I have 2 kids. They put the information on my girlfriend. They put information on what I like to do in my personal time. You know, obviously you can feed information to, you know, anti-police that may want to do harm. So now you're talking about the level of a charge, right? And unfortunate. So back in the Giuliani era, there was a broken windows theory, right? Anybody heard of the broken windows theory?
Yeah.
So if you address the small issues, it will prevent people from committing big ones, right? And it's unfortunately sometimes it's a system. The police officer doesn't have a choice of what jobs or what calls he or she is going to. We all have employers, and they tell you what to do. On that particular day, those officers were addressed to mitigate the quality of life condition that they were having at these businesses. These business owners were complaining that they were losing money because Eric Garner, along with other persons of interest, was selling untaxed cigarettes. And yes, it's a low-level crime, but everything's relative. For those people, it was a big deal because they're losing money. That's their livelihood. They're losing money in their business. Now, on this particular day, the officers that went there, that responded, they had prior knowledge of Eric Garner. They've dealt with him in the past. And you watch the video, like I said, there's a lot of complexity. It's perplexed because it doesn't show what they feel. It doesn't show everybody hanging out the windows the potential crowds that are there. It can get quite stressful. And I can confidently tell you, without ever meeting Officer Pantaleo, that that's not what he wanted. I'm confident in that. It's an unfortunate, tragic incident. But even with a low-level charge like that, the determination was to place him under arrest, right? To stop this low-level selling of untaxed cigarettes, to aid these businesses, to accomplish the mission that he was addressed. And in a situation like that, I say it's pick and poison. There could be no potential great outcome. So, I mean, unfortunately, he had a lot of contributing factors: overweight, diabetics, and heart issues. However, it's still tragic. And there's a lot of debate on whether it was a choke or not. But sometimes I like to ask, instead of taking him down and tackling him, what other tools or resources do you, in your opinions, do you think would be applicable or maybe better applied?
I don't know.
There's no right or wrong
But
answer.
I don't think someone should be killed for.
Well, let me ask you this: Do you think that the police officer had the intentions to kill him? Honestly,
No, but he wasn't prosecuted for unintentional manslaughter either. So that's what I think. I'm just trying to figure out where, because I'm trying to really understand your perspective. I think it's really
there's no right or wrong, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we all view this and we make a determination on our life experiences, our opinions. But in this situation, right, the determination is going to be placed under arrest. So without taking him down, and he is specifically saying, "I'm not going in today." What other options do you have? Right, you have taser on your belt, you have pepper spray, these other things.
What if you just had one officer stand next to him all day, and anyone who tried to buy a cigarette from him, you'd say, "Sorry, that's illegal."
I understand what you're saying, and you want to use time on your side, but sometimes you can use time. But you have to also factor in, we're in a city of 8 million residents, and there's millions of complaints a day. And sometimes you don't have the time to stand there all day and wait this person out. We're constantly moving. I mean, there's thousands, millions of calls that you never hear about, that just constantly go on throughout the day that are not prolific enough to be put out in the media because it's not sexy, because it goes smooth, it goes well. In most cases, these cases go without incident. I mean, no one gets harmed, no one gets injured. Like I said, there is no right or wrong answer. I'm confident to say I don't believe that he had any intentions to kill him or even hurt him. And I thought that he made a decision at that moment that the best thing was to take him down. And it's unfortunate and tragic. Do we learn from this? Absolutely. Sometimes, yes, it is better to use time on your side and wait things out as best you can. I mean, he's a big guy. He's a heavy-set guy. It's a daunting task. It's not easy to get that person in handcuffs. And unfortunately, and this is why I'm a firm believer that if there were criminal justice forces, people can understand that when you make the decision to resist arrest, whether you're passive or aggressive, okay, you've put your life on the line, because this is not a controlled environment. Here we're training. If you and I are grappling, right, and if I choke you or you choke me, we can tap out. There's no tapping out in the street. This is the real world. That we don't have a comfy mat. We have gravel and we have crowds of people, and it's just a daunting task. And thank God these things don't happen, in my opinion, as often as the media would like you to believe. So I hope we can do a better job, and I think that training is key. Do police officers need more training? Absolutely, it's very costly. I think all police officers should be involved in jiu-jitsu or grappling. I do think it's a better option. Probably going to save me. I'm missing a lot of knuckles. But it is a daunting task. And like I was referring to the taser. The taser is an option, right? But some people believe this is like a magical tool. It's a wand. And I can tell you this, the FBI did statistics, and it's only effective 48% of the time. So that's a flip of the coin, right? And Why it's only effective 48% of the time? So we live in New York City, and here we have 4 seasons. So sometimes we're wearing jackets, sometimes we're wearing hoodies, and these prongs that get deployed from this taser may not stick inside the adversary that you have. Okay. Also, distance is a factor. All right. So the closer that I am to my adversary, the less effective and more inept that taser would be. And the reason why is so tasers work on electrical currents, right? When it comes, when you shoot it, 2 prongs come out, right? So prong, if I'm close to you, prong may stick to his chest, maybe 6 inches away. So now, once I discharge that, the electrical current that's going through his body, it's just a small area. So I can fight that off. It's not going to incapacitate me. But if I shoot it from a distance, and unfortunately in a metropolis that we're in, we may not have the room to do that. But from a distance, when those prongs came out, I made it at his shoulder and his thigh, and now I have an electric current going through his entire body, and I can incapacitate him or her to make the arrest. So there's a lot of factors involved that make it accessible or not accessible.
I have a question about the things that you deal with on a daily basis and like what's sort of going on. In your experience, when you deal with a robbery, or when you deal with, God forbid, a rape case, or when you deal with, you know, somebody who, or an assault of some sort, what are the first things, if there are any consistencies, that a victim tells you happens that may have been, I know just what this can sound like, that may have been avoided? You know what I mean? Like in Krav Maga, they teach you all the time to avoid the conflict if you can or whatever. So.
Excellent. So, it's funny you said it. So, we have a kids program. They're called Explorers, and they learn about the basics of law enforcement, leadership. We check on the schoolwork. We have programs, and we teach them about military drills. And one thing we cover with them is, what you probably talk about here, is exactly situational awareness. So most of the times, victims of robberies or larcenies are because they're not paying attention. You know? So it's exactly that situational awareness. You know, a lot of people walk with their heads buried in the phone. You find those people become victim to robberies, or they get their phone snatched, or they're preoccupied with something. Or sometimes you gotta go with your gut. You know, like for your average citizen, sometimes they're, and you know what I'm saying, sometimes people approach you, they may ask certain questions, and your intuition, and all women have it, especially women, is telling you, this is a situation I need to avoid. But most people, including me, are afraid not to be polite, right? So because you want to be polite, you don't listen to that gut instinct that tells you, this is something I need to avoid, right? And you probably watch, anybody watch like these unsolved stories and these crazy kidnappings? And sometimes when you watch it, you say, it probably could have been avoided, right? You ever watch stuff about Ted Bundy, right? How did he avoid women? By being nice, right? But in a lot of these studies, they found when they were doing that, I think it was 2 of the women that actually got away, that they sensed in their intuition that something was wrong, but because he was polite, they were afraid not to be polite. Which is, so you gotta go with your gut and your intuition and instinct in situations like that. You sit on the subway and you see someone that is making movement that is indicative of something that may be of harm to you, and you know that, then don't forget about being polite and being nice. Take care of yourselves. And situational awareness is key. And I know they used to preach in Krav Maga, like I said, with triangles. You see someone with triangles, you know they're reaching for a potential weapon. Not making eye contact with people, you know. Especially, I would say, like, let's say you're sitting on a subway. I don't know if it's happened to anybody here, but maybe it has or maybe it hasn't. Has anyone ever sat on a calm subway and then maybe get 3 or 4 guys or girls and they're loud, right? And they're seeking for attention, right? They're trying to get you to enter their world, right? And so you keep your eyes to yourself, but then there's that, by accident, you lock eyes with somebody, right? You're like, oh shit, just enter their world, right? And that's what they want. And I would say the best thing you can do is just nod your head Just get back to what you're doing, right? You're not showing them any disrespect, but you don't want to enter their world. You know what I'm talking about, right? And I would say, for me, in police work, I see that 99% of assaults occur because someone felt disrespected. As silly as it sounds, you know, I have young gang members killing each other, and 99.9% of the time, it's because someone in the group felt disrespected by someone else. As silly as they put something on social media, and they didn't like something, or I mean, as silly as it is, that things like that. Road rage, people start giving each other the finger.
No, right.
Yeah.
So I can have, you mentioned before about criminal education, and I think you made a great point. I guess the question I would have is, you know, most people in Mesoterra, Ohio, very few people learn about Raleigh, Texas, or the other recruiters. So when you're walking around, and you guys, as part of your job, you are allowed to lie, and you are allowed to inquire further,
yes,
even when people are saying, I don't want to be doing this anymore. So, what's the best way? If you're Terry stopping me and I feel like you don't have the right to Terry stop me, what is the or identify me? What is the best way that I can handle that situation without letting it escalate? Which, as you mentioned, most of the issue was alleged police brutality happened because you told me to do X and I refused to do that. So what's the best standard that I can follow to say I don't agree with your that you're terror stopping me. I don't think I should be identified. I would like to go on with my business.
Excellent. So the new buzzword for everything is de-escalate. That's the new buzzword. So that's for the cop, and that's also for the person of interest. That's why there is process. So we do have, you can make complaints to police officers internally with internal affairs. You can make civilian complaints. If you do feel that an encounter that you had with the police is inaccurate, you should allow the process to play out, right? Because you don't want it to get into a physical confrontation. It never turns out good, right? But you do have the right to get the police officer's name, where they work, the location, the time that it happened. And if you feel that it was wrong, you have the option to make a complaint, and then an internal investigation will be done to determine if the police acted properly within the scope they wanted, or if they acted improperly. And these things do happen. Sometimes the police are wrong. Like any other job, they make mistakes. You know, unfortunately, sometimes mistakes within the police can cost lives. The other thing I like to talk about, so I hear a lot about when police use their firearms. I hear a lot of people say, why didn't they shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the arm? Anybody hear that? Anybody agree with that stuff? Sure. Anybody? Is that?
Sure, I agree.
You agree with it? Okay. No problem. I respect it completely. Have you? It's not a mess. What job you got? All right. Where do you work? Days off?
I know I work at Major League Baseball. I'm not a prosecutor. All
Okay.
my friends are.
Okay. All right. Outstanding. Have you ever fired a firearm? Have you ever fired a gun?
No.
Never. Has anybody ever fired a gun? Okay. How do you feel when you fire a gun?
Scared. I thought that I was worried that I would want one afterwards, and I shot both a rifle and a gun, and the last thing I wanted was to use that.
Did you hit your target?
No.
Yeah.
You didn't hit your target.
No.
And,
I know where you're going.
Yeah.
and when you hit your target,
Not even
or not hit your target, were you running?
No.
Was your heart pounding?
Yes.
Your heart was pounding. Okay. And you were not in a confrontational situation in real life where there's crowds of people and people screaming, yelling, and your hands going like this. These cops are human too, right? And you're in a situation where you have to use your firearm, especially in New York City. Let's say, God forbid, I'm right in Times Square, right? Right in front of the recruiting station. That's like the mecca of the world. There's thousands of people, right? And I have a potential perpetrator who pulls his firearm. Would you feel confident if I fired for his leg? Where's that bullet going if I miss?
Somebody else.
I'm no kid. Someone else, right? So, police officers aim for center mass of the target that is presented. So could the target be someone's head? Yeah. Could be someone's waist? Yeah. Could be their leg. It's not center mass of the person. It's center mass of the target that you're presented. So that means if I have someone shooting at me, okay, person's here, they're sticking out their head, shooting at me, going, send a massive what? The head. Now, it sounds gruesome and it sounds terrible, right? But I have to stop this threat. Police do not shoot to kill. Police do not shoot to kill. I was in the Marines, I was overseas, we shot to kill. End of story. In policing, we do not shoot to kill, you shoot to stop the threat. So that means if I fire a round and that person hits the ground, it stops, right? That's where I want to get myself cover somewhere that I can protect myself and assess if it's safe to move forward. Can someone still be a threat who's been shot 6 times?
Yes.
Absolutely. Who mentioned it? With crazy drugs and all this stuff? I've had people on PCP, girls this big, and man, whoo, fight your life. You know, they don't feel, maybe the next day they feel, well, that day they don't feel anything.
I have a quick question going back to the subways and like nighttime and stuff like that. And I work at night, so I kind of see a lot of this, and I don't know whether I would to intervene or not. But like, you be on the subway, and like you say, you see a bunch of loud kids coming in. Here's a gal sitting on the bench, minding her own business. They come over and start hassling her. And it's like, you got this kind of moral thing, like, do I get involved? You know, I just kind of want to know your opinion.
I think it's a great question. So, I think it's a case-by-case basis. I think it's something that you want to keep your eye on and watch. But again, you don't want to enter their world because once you do, their focus is now going to be on you, right? And at this point, you have 3 or 4 adversaries. You don't know who's armed or what position you have just put yourself in. Now, absolutely, God forbid, if they attempt to rape her or trying to kill her, and I mean, this is life or death, I would think any one of us morally would step in. But at the point that you're telling me, I think the best option is to use your observational skills, which you all have because you live in New York City, and watch and look and pay attention to what she's wearing, what they're wearing, right? Very important, what they're wearing. Let me teach you something, okay? What I teach my people. When you look at someone to pay attention with what they're wearing, do you look from the top down or the bottom up?
I look from the bottom up.
Excellent. Anybody else? Bottom up or top down? Okay, I teach people to look from the bottom up. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. So here you go. What's that? 9 times out of 10. So let's, in a situation like that, you have a girl who's a potential victim. Okay, you're watching this unfold. You see all the behavioral indicators, all the triggering factors, all the mitigating factors that you know that she's a potential victim. You jotted down in your head what she's wearing, what she looks like, where she was, what train car you're in. Believe it or not, you'd be surprised what you're going to pay attention to, all the little details. Okay? And then you want to pay attention to what they're wearing from the bottom up, because if something happens and they flee, and you want to give the information to the police, they're going to take the shirts off, they're going to take the hats off, they may even take the pants off, they don't have a pair of shorts to wear, but they're not going to take their shoes off. Key fact. 99 times 100, we get perpetrators that flee, go to their residence, change, come out with the same shoes on. Why? I don't know. It's the darndest thing to me. Why they don't change their shoes? To me, I would change the whole thing, but they leave the shoes on. All right? And that's another thing about situational awareness. Pay attention to tattoos, right? Pay attention to identifiable marks, scars, accents, right? You might think it's annoying. Sometimes where police respond and they're investigating a case, will ask the same questions 100 times, right? Because it jogs your memory. Something just happened. And they'll say, well, what did they say? Don't want what did they say? And you say, the guy said, motherfucker, give me your money, right? And that's important because if we have a pattern, we probably said this to the same people. Now I know this guy always says, motherfucker, give me your money, you know?
I actually have a firearms question. It's pertinent to me currently, so I thought I'd ask it. I grew up in Arizona, and Arizona, I grew up with an arsenal next to my house, and you didn't need a permit to get a firearm unless you concealed carry. Then you had to get a permit. Oftentimes, it may be foreign to people in this room, but in Arizona you felt safe Like I knew nobody was coming around the 7-Eleven because half the people in that 7-Eleven had a gun holstered on their hip, and it was an open carry. Here, I know in Arizona, if anybody steps onto your property and you feel threatened in any way, you pretty much put them down. Here, not so much. I'm currently applying for, put in an application for a firearm permit. What I know it's only for the house, shooting range, hunting. That's it. When can I, like, as far as if you feel threatened at home, when in New York, what can you do? What can you do?
Great question. So, are you asking when you can use
When,
this weapon
yes,
at home?
when can I use it to protect myself in New York? I know when I can do it in Arizona, here not so much.
Well, so that's a real case-by-case basis, and you would have to prove that you're boxed in, your life is at risk, and there is no escape route or option available. Every state is different. Some states have standing ground laws.
Standard ground, right?
No. You always run, duck, and hide. But yes, so each state, we have a federal government, but each state has their own laws when it comes to firearms. Some are more stringent than others. That's why it's important that you get involved with your city councils and vote, things like that. That's important. Get involved in NRA, or if you're not into guns. But I can tell you this: if I have this knife, and if I have a gun, without me picking this up, can this gun shoot anybody if it was a real gun? Same thing. Can this knife just go and stab somebody? No. So for a lot of people that are anti-gun, these guns, it can't hurt anybody unless someone uses it. We keep that in mind. People commit crimes, not objects.
I have a great question related to this. Guys, it will have to be like the last 2 minutes. We're already over time.
He had one real quick. I'm sorry. Go ahead, son.
What are your thoughts on the citizen's arrest?
That's a good question. So to make a citizen's arrest is the dichotomy between being a citizen and being a police officer, right? So a police officer has a badge, and what that badge is representative of is reflective that police have court cases to be intrusive, right? So if I see you go in a building that I know sells drugs, you went in and you came out in 2 seconds, I know based on my experience that you went and you bought a bag of crack, right? And you're up to no good. So I don't have enough to detain you, but I have enough to stop you and engage you in a conversation. And I can ask incriminating questions on purpose to get you to incriminate yourself. So I may say, hey, I know where you came from, right? I saw you, but I'm not going to tell you, right? Let me say, hey, where you coming from, right? Now, I know you came from 250 West 100th Street, but you might tell me, I came from this store over here, blah, blah, blah. So I know you're lying to me, but because you lied to me, now I have the right to detain you. So police officers have these levels of intrusion. The citizen has to make an arrest based on probable cause. They saw a crime committed, right, and they can make an arrest. So they don't have those levels of intrusion, but if you do see a crime committed in front of you, you can act on it. And I do recommend not to.
I'm going to police people. Sorry, what if the individual starts getting violent? Because he already committed a crime, the type is going to attack. And then who's at fault? Are you at fault for saying that? And how do you tell the person that you're making a citizen's arrest?
I would to alleviate any issues, I would stay away from that unless someone's life is on the line.
Yeah.
I would stay away from it. Let the police mitigate that. So I know you want to end. Just want to finish something real quick. So let me get six people up there, please. The biggest thing you have, I don't care. So I want to show you something. Okay. So everybody thinks it's. Anybody got any cell phones on? No.
I have a cell phone.
Okay. Who's loud here? Who's very charismatic and loud? You? No?
I'm loud. I'm not charismatic. I'm loud.
Oh, you're loud, right? Okay, good. Okay, so what I want to show you, so what I want you to do, so you want to be one of my actors. Can I get another actor? No? We should have 4 of us can take it. So I want you, so I'm going to give them a minute on the clock, all right? So I'm just gonna put my hands like this. Okay? Nobody likes on camera. No knees, no punching. I just want you to pull my arms apart and get them behind my back. You got a minute, okay? That's all. I want you just to pull my arms and try to get them behind my back. All right? While that's happening, I want you to take the phone and put it in their faces, in my face, okay? And I want you to scream.
Actually, want you to record it.
What's that? No, I want you just to take the phone.
Okay, I got you.
I want you to feel what it's like to be a police officer. So they're police trying to arrest me, and you know what? The phone. Yo!
Oh, I've seen how it's done.
All right? And I want you to scream and yell, and then everybody else here, you're the crowd, and I want you to scream, yo! Yo, he didn't do nothing! He ain't resisting! All right? Can you help me out?
Yeah, so we did like these.
What's that? Yeah. So you're a police officer, all right? So I'm just going to put my arm like this, because nobody likes it. No punch, no kick. I just want to show you. All right? 2 people try to pull this arm apart. 2 people try to pull this arm apart. Get it behind my back, and you got a minute, all right? So I want you guys, you're the crowd. You're out, all right, let's say this is Times Square. You're watching, you see the police about to make an arrest, and you're like, yo, he didn't do nothing, yo, all right? All right, can you help me out here? Yeah. So you got a minute, just get my arms behind my back, go. Hey, You got a minute?
Yeah.
How you feel? So, somebody was thinking right now too. Who's this? Thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Larry.